The audience. Cam, I can't see you. Okay. Okay.
It is no secret that Americans are obsessed with sporting events. So obsessed, in fact, that we create whole networks strictly for the area of sports, such as ESPN. There is also a great pressure and glorification that many pro athletes have fallen victim to. Many use steroids or other drugs and have fallen with injuries. This has created a glorified image that many youth athletes have aspired to attain. Unfortunately, the goal can come at great cost for them. Youth injuries are on the rise, and it's very clear to see why. According to an article written by Brian Toporek in Education Week, Volume 31, Issue 9, youth athletes' injuries are on the rise mostly because young athletes are specializing in sports a lot earlier than previous generations. In earlier years, multiple sports were used to train different muscle groups. For instance, if you were to play baseball, it would be a lot different than playing soccer. I can also attest to this fact. As being a former club player, I saw many of my fellow teammates fall victim to overwork injuries. Sports injuries are of great concern in any athlete, but it is especially alarming to see such a large number occurring in youth these days. Resting periods and playing limits must start to be imposed on youth players, both for their physical and mental well-being. Today we are going to look at how injuries affect youth, what coaches and parents are doing to encourage this behavior, and some ways to prevent this. First, we are going to examine how injuries are so detrimental to youth. Youth are inherently more prone to overwork and injuries in sports, mostly because they are still growing and because of their stature. One major concern recently has become with the brain and with brain injuries. According to an article penned by Hosea H. Harvey in the American Journal of Public Health published in Volume 103, Issue 7, brain injuries are becoming under increased scrutiny lately, especially concussions. Since child's brains are still growing, trauma can have lasting effects on them. Also, the Nebraska High School Athletic Association has started enacting a baseline test, which is taken when you are completely at ease and no stress. And if you are ever suspected of having a brain injury, you must take that test and get a score that was better or the same as the previous test that you took when you were rested. However, brain injuries aren't the only thing that are on the rise. Let's just take a look at ACL tears and other knee injuries. Dr. Remsburg states in the article, "Sports injuries are on the rise, here's why," published June 18, 2013 in the Prairie Village Post, that ACL injuries are up almost 400% over a 10-year period. This is extremely alarming and should be a crazy statistic to look at. As you can see back here, this chart was published by Brown University and is ACL frequency by minutes played. This was of a survey of basketball players, and the longer that you play consecutive minutes, the more likely you are to get a knee injury or, in this case, an ACL tear. For instance, 37 and 39 and 33 minutes are the most likely for you to be having an ACL injury. In addition, there are also some differences between the genders on knee problems. Women tend to have more knee problems than men, mostly because of the way that they are physically built. As you can see from this chart over here, published by Basketball Prospectus of another survey of basketball players, there were about 400 men and about 390 women who were surveyed, and only 9 men were affected by the injuries and 62 women were affected by an ACL injury. This compares to about 2% of men to 16% of women. That's 8 times the men. And so there's definitely a great difference in that kind of injury. There are also lots of less serious injuries that are mostly due to overwork. These can include things like aches and soreness. However, it may not seem so bad at first, but it can definitely get a lot worse if you let it go untreated. The more you work these muscles and the more that they get achy and sore, the more prone you are to get a more serious injury. So the longer it goes untreated, the worse it's going to be. For instance, repeated throwing of pitches in baseball can wear out a pitcher's elbow, shoulder, or arm entirely and can lead to some famous surgeries like the Tommy John surgery. Jane E. Brody writes in the New York Times article, "For children in sports, a breaking point, that overuse, overtraining, and burnout in adolescent athletes is a huge growing problem. However, the limitations of a child's body are not the only thing that is putting injuries on the rise. Let's just take a look at the parents that are sitting in the stands. Parents are just as much of a driving force behind youth injuries as the sport themselves. Jane E. Brody of the New York Times writes in her article for Children in Sports, A Breaking Point, that many parents often drive their kids into injuries because of their short-sightedness. The father that was interviewed for this article said that despite a doctor saying that his son should stop throwing pitches for up to a month, they had recently come into the playoffs for their baseball league, and that his son should blaze a trail to the championship. Not only is this short-sighted, but is extremely selfish on the parent's part to care more about the winning and the team than his own son's benefit. In my own experience, I can also say that there are some crazy parents out there as well. Parents who would shout from the sidelines and call girls mean names would just not make it very fun anymore and would become a great burden to us. We shouldn't be playing to make our parents happy, win titles, and then get no enjoyment out of the sport anymore. We should play to work towards a common goal with our friends and teammates. This is not what sports should be, and we should not encourage sports to be that way. And if our parents aren't recognizing the signs and encouraging just the opposite, and athletes aren't preventing this kind of behavior until it's too late, it can be hard to curb youth injuries. Fortunately, things are being done in sports already to prevent youth injuries. League officials and coaches need to start stepping up more on this issue. Early detection of child injuries is important, both for the success of the child and the team in general. In the article Pitch Count, Not Innings, to Limit Little League Hurlers by Dick Patrick in the USA Today, Little League Baseball is starting to limit the number of pitches, not innings, that a youth pitcher can throw. This is a huge benefit for the player and is very good for the baseball in general because innings can be very broad. You could theoretically throw up to 90 pitches in a 3-inning span, depending on how well the team is doing. It also might seem like a burden at first for the team, but it actually will maximize the team's maximum potential and ensure that their players can play at their best at all times. It is also important to note that resting, the physical act of not doing anything, and recovering in training is extremely crucial. According to the website iSports Soccer, published by iSport and accessed on June 26, 2013, resting should be taken seriously and is vital in conditioning plans. Scheduling specific days off will ensure that teams will be ready to face the tough competition. You're more likely to perform at your best when you're well rested than you are when you're tired and fatigued. Additionally, do not overwork yourself just because you feel like you're rested or you feel like you need to do something. If you are sore, your body will be telling you to rest. It'll bounce back eventually, and if you really must do something that day, try and perform some light work, like maybe a walk or something. Knowing some causes and ways to combat youth injuries, it should be easy to enact small ways to change how sports are played for youth. After playing so many years of select soccer and hearing of so many pro sport injuries, it's no surprise to note that youth injuries and injuries in general in sports are on the rise. This will not only affect the children in their younger years, but well into their adult lives. Coaches, parents, and sports officials must come to recognize that we need to encourage youth to take more breaks from their sporting events and to stop putting such a high, fast-paced feel on winning in children. My high school soccer team did in fact win the Nebraska State Championship for soccer for 2 years, and those were high points in my life. However, I did not go on to pursue a college soccer career while some of my friends did. It is not everything for me, and it doesn't have to be everything for everyone. Winning is great, but the playing should be more fun than anything. And if your dream is to go and play on at a college level or even a pro sports level, remember that there should always be time for rest and that you should take care of yourself.